time today talking to you about education technology from an entrepreneur standpoint. I've been involved in ed tech for about the past 10 years. I started a company called SchoolRack in 2003, which was a learning management system, which is basically a tool for teachers to communicate with their students outside of the classroom. So they could assign homework, they could collect their post grades online, host discussions with their students, and I ended up running that company for about 8 years and growing it to about 500,000 users. Shortly after working on that company, I worked in venture capital for 2 years in Los Angeles at a company called Greycroft, and 6 months ago left to start my next ed tech venture, which is called Glean, which is an online video platform for middle school, high school, and college students. And I thought it would be interesting today to sort of just leave you with that description of Glean, walk you through a couple trends that I saw in ed tech and how things were changing from an entrepreneur standpoint, and then at the end of the presentation, walk you through what exactly Glean is and how I think it checks the boxes for all of the new trends in ed tech today. So I want to cover 4 topics today, and I think they're very relevant in education technology because things are changing quite rapidly. The cost of starting technology companies has significantly decreased, the cost of storing data has significantly decreased, and all of these things have a pretty profound impact on how technology entrepreneurs create ed tech products. So the first thing I wanted to point out is the fact that ed tech has changed pretty fundamentally in that it's become quite fragmented. So teachers today are now they're now provided a host of ed tech products, and here's sort of a cross-section of the ed tech products available today, and this is about 20% of what's out there. You've got products in curriculum, you've got products in teacher needs, you've got products for school operators, college resources, and a bucket called everything else. And there's one company called EdSurge which tries to track the ed tech landscape. And they've done a very good job putting all of the products together here. But normally fragmentation is a bad thing, and what I want to argue today is that it's actually a good thing for education technology. So back when I was starting SchoolRack in 2003, there were a couple incumbents in the market that I would call one-size-fits-all products. There were products that did everything under the sun. They would start by offering one feature to schools, and then every year they'd release a couple new features to their existing customers just to bring some more value out of their customers. So take, for example, this company called PowerSchool, which has been around since 2000. They offer products in attendance management, gradebook and reporting, classroom seating, faculty management, co-teaching management, basically anything and everything a single school would need to operate from a tech standpoint. But the reason this is bad is because they're a jack of all trades and a master of none. And their product is mediocre on pretty much every level, and it doesn't excel in any of these one features, but it does accomplish what they say they want to accomplish, just not so well. And nowadays we're starting to see education technology companies really start to focus on one problem and solve it incredibly well. So I want to point out 4 technology companies today in the market. One is called ClassDojo, which has been around for about 1.5 years and has already scaled to 34 million users. And their product is remarkably simple. All it is it's a tool for teachers to have all their classroom roster online and to give bonus points to students that are behaving properly and to give negative points to students that are behaving poorly. That's their value proposition, and they are now one of the biggest companies and the most talked about companies in ed tech today. Next one is Remind 101. Again, remarkably simple. They offer a text messaging platform for teachers to communicate with their students outside of the classroom. So, say I'm a teacher, Mr. Doe, I have 30 students, I've dismissed them to go home for the day, and at 5 p.m. I want to remind them that they have homework due the next day. I'll log into Remind 101, I'll type in a 140-character text message, I'll click send, and every single one of my students will receive it. That has scaled to 10 million users in about 2 years. Study Blue, again, remarkably simple, a mobile flashcard company. You open the app, you type in what's on the front of the flashcard, what's on the back of the flashcard, and ta-da, you've got an incredibly successful product in EdTech. And Edmodo is another learning management system that's remarkably simple, but also remarkably successful. So, products in EdTech have become a lot more unbundled today, and soon they'll be able to share data between one another. And so, earlier when I was showing PowerSchool and how there was a one-size-fits-all product, they try to cover all of these products in one, and they don't have very good data, they don't have very good features, they don't have very good products, but instead those products have become unbundled. There are hundreds of companies tackling those individual features by themselves, and soon they'll be able to share this data amongst one another. So one of the big initiatives in EdTech today is the ability to share student data among companies. Student data right now is incredibly siloed. If you look back here, ClassDojo has data on 34 million students, Remind 101 has data on 10 million students, and so on and so forth. And the goal with these two companies is to build the pipes between all of these EdTech startups. In Bloom is a nonprofit organization that recently closed $100 million in funding from the Gates Foundation to solve just this problem. They want to create a structure for sharing data between EdTech companies. And when you sort of think about how powerful that can be, you start to realize that $100 million is a warranted amount of money to try to solve this problem. So in summary, I think a successful EdTech company is one that truly specializes and thinks about their role in the EdTech ecosystem and how they can share data with some of the complementary products around them. So the next topic I want to talk about is, again, student data. Student data has become so important in the EdTech space, and here are just three companies and how they're tracking student data online. So most of you have probably heard of Khan Academy. It's an online video platform for learning. All the videos have been created by a prolific teacher called Salman Khan, and he teaches about 15 to 20 million students a month throughout the globe. And this is a quote from one of his product managers: "Every day we collect around 8 million data points on exercise and video interactions, and a few million more. And these are all very important data points to help personalize learning for their students." Newton is another company that's focused on personalized learning, and their bread and butter, again, is data. The CEO gave a speech last month where he said education happens to be today the world's most data-mineable industry by far. And he gave the example of how Google and Yahoo, they collect 5 to 10 pieces of data on every user on their site, and he claimed that Newton collects 5 to 10 million data points per student per day on their products. So they track everything from how quickly you're reading, what words you skim over, what questions you get right, what questions you get wrong, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that all of these data play a role in how students learn in the future. And the last one, again, ClassDojo. 2 months ago, they passed 1 billion pieces of feedback, so they know which students are properly behaved and which students are improperly behaved. And the beauty is the cost of storing these data has decreased dramatically. So in 1981, a gigabyte cost $300,000. In 2012, it cost 10 cents, and you can sort of see the progression and how it's just going to get cheaper and cheaper, and how companies like Khan, Newton, and ClassDojo are just going to be able to store more and more data. And so this is at a high level what it could look like to store data on a student. You've got educational standards along the top, you've got student's name along the rows, and you see sort of a heat map in the middle where you can see Jane Addams does really well in educational concepts 2 and 5, but is struggling in 1, 3, and 4. And therefore, going forward, we can focus on the areas of need for Jane, versus Scott, who does better in educational concepts 2 and 4, needs help in 1, 3, and 5. And classrooms are in desperate need of personalized learning. So the classroom hasn't changed in centuries. And if you look here, you'll see that this graph shows student progression over the course of a semester. So on the left-hand side of the graph, you see that students have learned 0% of what they need to learn in the class. And at the end of the school year, you'll see that there are some students that have hit the 80% mark, but there are other students that have hit the 20% mark. And unfortunately, the teacher, which is the blue line in the middle, can only teach to the middle of the class. So there are going to be students, half the students are going to be ahead of the curve, the other half of the students are going to be behind the curve, and the teacher is not in a position to teach to everybody individually, which is why data like this is going to help personalize this learning, and hopefully in the future every student will have a blue line to accompany themselves so that they can get truly personalized learning for each one. So in summary, personalized learning is the wave of the future in EdTech, and collecting lots and lots of student data is the first step in solving that problem. And I think one of the most important things is the fact that education is responding to some of these changes in technology. So like I said, the classroom hasn't changed in centuries. This picture is very, very old, but for some reason it still looks very familiar to us. You've got 30 to 50 students sitting in the classroom, you've got a lecturer at the front, and they sort of listen for 40 to 50 minutes to a lecture, even though it's been proven over and over again that students only have an attention span of about 10 to 15 minutes before they need a break. The beauty is that this is changing. So schools have taken notice. They've started to incorporate technology into the classrooms, whether it's laptops, tablets, cell phones, and they're starting to use that to their advantage. So I want to take a step back and explain what a company called New Classrooms is doing out of New York City. So New Classrooms is a nonprofit consultancy, and their role is to help schools adopt technology in the classrooms. And so what they do is incredibly drastic. They send a team into a school, they take 5 adjacent classrooms, and they break down the walls of all 5 classrooms. So instead of being 5 individual classrooms, it's now one huge classroom with 200 students. And what they've done in that classroom is they've taken those 5 teachers that were originally in those individual classrooms, and they've created stations for every student to learn at throughout the day. And so you can, this is called blended learning, where they incorporate lecture and instruction in parts of the class, and they incorporate technology in other parts of the class. So when a student walks into a New classroom, they are presented 5 different places that they can go. And where they go depends on how they've performed the day prior. So if I have missed 3, say I'm student A, and I've missed 3 problems yesterday on Pythagorean theorem, but I did incredibly well when I was learning concentric circles, I'll go to the top left section. Versus student B, who was the opposite, did really well on Pythagorean theorem, but failed when they were trying to learn concentric circles, we'll go to the bottom right, where a lecturer is focused exclusively on that. And so what New Classrooms does is they collect data on every student every step of the way, and at the end of the school day they crunch the numbers, and the next day in class every student has a unique agenda of places to sit at through the classroom so that they can learn and target where they weren't able to target prior. And so EdTech companies need to work around this. They need to know that teachers are starting to use their technologies in the classroom, but not throughout the entire class. They use them a la carte. They use them in bite-sized segments, in bite-sized increments. So, whereas before you would sign up with Pearson and you would have a textbook that you would read throughout the 50 minutes of class, now you've got 5 products that you use throughout the class, and every product you use for about 5 to 7 minutes. So you have to build a product that can jump straight to where a student needs help and focus on that one area. And this is where all these companies are starting to interact. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about the role of online video. It's sort of a hot topic these days with Coursera, with Khan Academy, and a lot of people are wondering where online video sits in the future of education. And so just to give you a sense of numbers, this is YouTube alone, but 6 billion hours of online videos watched per month on YouTube. So there are about 7 billion people in the world. We can take a step back and say about an hour of online videos watched per person per month on YouTube, which is an astounding figure. They have 1 billion unique visitors per month, and they're expecting to grow anywhere from 50 to 75% year over year. And when polled, 66% of students say they use online video in one form or another to learn. And the beauty of it is that video is endemic to students. So YouTube, the most prevalent demo on YouTube is teenagers, followed by people in their early 20s, followed by people in their late 20s, followed by people in their early 30s. So when you approach a student and you say, hey, you should learn through this video, they're like, great, I already know what video is. I spend an hour on YouTube a night anyways, bring it on. And so teachers are starting to realize this fact, and they record themselves creating videos for educational content on a daily basis. And this is one of the things that inspired me to create Glean, is that teachers are now creating videos either because they're enthusiasts of education or because they want their students to go home and watch these videos to free up time in class to do more interesting things, more hands-on work. And so if you go to YouTube and you search, again, Pythagorean theorem, you'll get over 500 teachers that have created videos that will teach the same exact concept, just at a different pace, using different visual media in different settings, with different personalities. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And so you're probably familiar with some of these logos. You've got Coursera, edX, and Udacity on the right-hand side when you're thinking higher level education. And you've got Khan Academy, ourselves, and a company called Nomia in the K-12 space. And it's only growing. There are only more competitors coming out, and there are going to be more and more options for people to fall back on. And so what is Glean? Glean is an online video platform that personalizes the videos to the students. So if we take a step back and think about the 3 things that I covered earlier, the first most important thing in starting a net tech company is specializing on something and becoming a master of something. And so we focus exclusively on online video. We don't deal with exercises, we don't deal with assessments, we want to be the best online video provider online. The second thing is collecting student data. Anytime a student logs into Glean, anytime they watch a video, anytime they answer a question, anytime they vote on a teaching style that they like, we track that. And when they're watching videos, we track down to the second when they pause videos, how often they scrub forward, how quickly they abandon a video, how long their pauses are to see if they're really taking in the information. And that will eventually, the more and more data we collect, the more and more we can personalize the platform for the students. And the last thing is building a product for today's classroom. So instead of having a product that a student uses for 50 minutes, you need to have a product that a student can use for 4 minutes. So the way we built Glean is that they can come straight in, use the search bar, search for Pythagorean theorem, and with the click of a button, jump straight to learning Pythagorean theorem in 4 minutes. And so when you think back to this graph, and how you have one teacher that can only teach to the middle of the classroom, and there are people left at the bottom half of the classroom and the top half of the classroom that are either unchallenged or too challenged to move forward. You think back to this, and you think there are 500 teachers that are teaching Pythagorean theorem on YouTube right now. There has to be one teacher that works incredibly well for every single one of these students on this learning curve. And that's the problem we're trying to solve with Glean. Thank you so much for your time.